Most people stay stuck because they ignore daily learning. They wait for big breakthroughs, expensive courses, the perfect job opening, or a sudden chunk of free time. So skills never add up, confidence tucks away, and entire years pass with nothing to show. You can watch endless tutorials and still not move forward. Swap 10 minutes of scrolling for 10 minutes of focused practice, writing one function, translating a paragraph, or rehearsing a single riff, and 3 months later you have something real, not just another playlist. Perfectionism kills momentum. People delay until conditions are perfect, buy the shiny course, and then never open it. No practice accumulates, no small wins stack, and opportunities quietly slip by. Progress doesn't need dramatic gestures. Small, repeatable habits, reading one page each morning, asking a quick clarifying question after a meeting, saving a 5-minute voice note, compound into new roles, clearer thinking, and options you can actually choose. And later you'll hear 3 tiny routines that take less than 10 minutes a day and actually move the needle. The everyday drift. Small missed lessons become big gaps. Retention fades without regular retrieval practice. Miss a few quick reviews of vocabulary or problem types and those words and procedures stop popping into mind when they're needed, which then means relearning rather than building, and relearning takes more time and feels harder. At work, the same pattern shows up in tiny routines. A developer who skips a daily 5-minute code review loses touch with evolving style and conventions, and that small drift produces mismatched functions, repeated bugs, and slower onboarding for anyone who later has to read the code. Similarly, a project manager who stops brief check-ins with a team member misses small misunderstandings that compound into missed deadlines and scope creep. Habits break down when maintenance becomes optional. A pianist who skips scales for a week finds fingering less automatic and struggles on pieces that previously felt easy. And athletes who drop short technical drills notice more mental effort during complex plays because the basic patterns no longer run on autopilot. Repairing the drift is usually less dramatic than a sprint. When engineers glance at error logs for 10 minutes each morning, they catch recurring exceptions before they balloon into system outages. And language learners who plug 2 minutes of spaced review into their day keep dozens of words accessible without a stressful cram session. Those small, steady interventions reduce the need for long, disruptive catch-up work. How comfort masks the cost of stagnation. Most people settle into daily routines because they feel reliable. Those routines, checking the same news sources, doing the same tasks at work, using familiar tools, create a steady background that looks like stability even when nothing is changing beneath the surface. An office assistant who keeps using an old scheduling system while the company adopts cloud platforms loses small pieces of relevance every month. Over time, those small gaps add up and the paths to promotion or new opportunities narrow without any dramatic event to notice. The paycheck that arrives regularly masks a shifting market. When sales strategies move online and a salesperson keeps relying on in-person networking, their commission checks can slowly fall behind peers who picked up new channels. As the market rewards different skills, being comfortable with yesterday's methods causes missed deals, reduced bargaining power, and fewer chances to lead high-visibility projects. That slow divergence is the real cost of comfort. Staying within familiar social and professional circles seems harmless. But people who stop attending conferences or skip conversations with new hires stop getting exposed to fresh ideas and collaborators. A software engineer who stops going to meetups or contributing to open source misses not only knowledge but the informal referrals and team-ups that create job mobility. Those shrinking connections make it harder later to pivot or join innovative teams. Daily habits that prioritize ease over challenge erode motivation in ways you don't always notice. Evenings spent on passive entertainment instead of tinkering with side projects don't feel like failure, but they blunt curiosity and problem-solving muscle. When a chance to lead a small cross-functional effort arrives, the person who has practiced leading in low-stakes settings is more likely to step up, while the one who stayed comfortable may defer and then never get that experience. The accumulated effect is a career that looks steady but is actually narrower and more brittle than it appears. A typical week, where learning gets lost. Most people's calendars are shaped by other people's priorities. Meetings set by managers, email threads that demand replies, and tasks tagged urgent at the top of a list. Short. The result is predictable. Deliberate learning gets squeezed out because scheduling is reactive, not intentional, and that squeezes the long, uninterrupted stretches your brain needs to absorb something new. Commutes, coffee breaks, and 5-minute gaps between calls sound like time you could use. Short. In reality, those pockets are noisy and fragmented, and a 10-minute window on a train is rarely enough to work through a complex concept or practice a new skill, so the moment becomes scrolling instead of studying. Weekends are supposed to be the safety valve, where the week's loose ends are tied up and real learning will happen. Short, but end-of-week carryover, unfinished reports, follow-ups, and household errands pulls the weekend into catch-up mode, leaving evenings frayed and motivation low, which is exactly when deep practice fails to find a place. Notifications and tiny decisions thinned across the day act like invisible leaks on attention. Short, choosing between 3 Slack threads, a headline, and a quick snack uses the same cognitive resources that starting a focused learning session would, so by the time someone thinks about studying, there's little bandwidth left and the cycle repeats. Practical daily moves that actually compound. Most people feel like they never have time to learn, and that quiet drift is the real reason skills stall. A 10-minute, focused session tied to an everyday cue, like after your morning coffee or right before your commute, compounds because the cue repeats reliably and the mind stays tuned to one small goal at a time. It doesn't have to be grand to matter. A short habit that fits into the flow of your day keeps you moving forward while bigger plans quietly collect dust. Doing tiny, specific practice beats vague intentions. For example, spending 5 to 10 minutes each day drilling a single keyboard shortcut or a single sentence structure in a new language makes that action automatic, which saves real time later when you need it. Repetition on a focused microskill reduces friction and turns awkward moments into effortless ones. So the next time you face the task, you act without thinking, and the task takes far less energy. Turning input into output is what causes learning to stick. Summarizing a lesson in a 1-paragraph note, recording a 60-second voice memo about a problem you solved, or drafting a short commit message after finishing a small coding task forces retrieval and exposes gaps you didn't notice while consuming content. That quick output creates a visible trail, a set of notes, drafts, or posts that you can revisit, refine, and reuse, which slowly builds a portfolio of concrete progress. A tiny end-of-day review matters more than long weekend planning. Noting one improvement and one question in a notebook or notes app creates a feedback loop. You see patterns, adjust your next tiny practice, and avoid repeating the same shallow effort. When people track a single metric or a single learning question, they correct course faster and move from random attempts to steady, compounding improvement. Anchor new moves to routines you already do and they stick without heroic effort. Tucking 5 minutes of reading after lunch, adding a short breath-based focus before an evening meeting, or practicing a single sales pitch line while making coffee takes advantage of a reliable trigger and reduces the decision cost that kills most intentions. That small alignment between habit and cue makes consistency far more likely, and consistent microsteps accumulate into meaningful capability. Quick social signals accelerate the process because accountability tightens tiny commitments. Sharing a 1-sentence daily learning note with a colleague, sending a short clip of progress to a study partner, or posting a brief insight to a small group creates mild public friction that nudges action. The effect is simple. Small, repeated public steps invite feedback, correct blind spots, and make those little moves compound into clearer competence and more opportunities. Designing a gentle, realistic learning rhythm. Most people notice that cramming feels efficient but rarely sticks, and cognitive research on the spacing effect explains why distributed practice outperforms marathon sessions. When learning is spread out, memories get chances to consolidate between encounters, so recall becomes easier and the material integrates with what you already know. Think of a language learner who runs through a handful of flashcards during short gaps in the day rather than gutting out a single long review on the weekend. The steady repeats strengthen recall in real contexts. That steady, gentle rhythm reduces the rebound of forgetting and makes later review less punishing. The urge to overhaul everything often hits against a packed calendar. Anchoring small learning acts to existing routines trims friction and makes practice believable instead of aspirational. A software engineer who tunes a technical podcast during the commute ends up absorbing patterns and vocabulary without having to clear out a block of time, which produces gradual comprehension gains. Because the effort is absorbed into what already happens, consistency rises and the habit outlives motivation spikes. Progress looks invisible when goals are too big and fuzzy. Breaking aims into tiny, observable signals turns vague effort into clear evidence of movement, which keeps momentum alive. A pianist who records a short passage and listens back notices micro-improvements and can target the next tiny adjustment, while a coder who commits small features to a repository builds a visible trail of work that reduces the nothing-changed feeling. Those small wins feed forward into future sessions, making it easier to return and stack more learning episodes. Life interrupts, and strict schedules quickly feel brittle. Designing a rhythm that allows for flexible modalities, swapping an active problem set for a passive audio review when time is tight, keeps the sequence intact and lowers the chance of abandoning it entirely. When someone misses a planned deep study, switching to a lighter, related activity preserves continuity and minimizes the guilt that often derails follow-through. Over time, these forgiving, realistic patterns create a cumulative advantage. Small, consistent touches add up into meaningful skill growth without burning people out. You feel like you're moving but not getting anywhere. When daily learning is skipped, small gaps become big holes over months. A few missed minutes of practice means forgotten words, rusted code, less confidence at the moment you need it. It silently slows everything down. You tell yourself you'll catch up next weekend. That decision to binge once a week causes knowledge to fade between sessions, and the next practice becomes harder because the brain needs review instead of building forward.
So Momentum dies.
You believe big pushes will save you. Weekend marathons light a spark, but without the daily embers the spark goes out fast. A friend who crammed a course still couldn't use the skill 3 weeks later. Short, steady steps actually keep the path clear. Small wins feel too small to matter. 10 minutes of vocabulary each day totals dozens of hours a year, and practicing one guitar chord a day lets your fingers build muscle memory without sore fingers or burnout. Over time, the tiny habits stack into real ability. You're probably wondering what to take away. Keep it simple. Choose tiny, concrete tasks you can do daily, measure progress in small units, and let consistency compound into real change. Those 3 moves close the gap between effort and outcome. If this connected with you, stick around. There are more short, real examples coming. First, we'll share quick routines for language, coding, creativity, and weekly check-ins with real people who moved from stuck to steady, and you can watch which tiny steps actually work.